Okay, everybody, welcome to Module 9. We are rounding out this class now, and these last three modules are really going to focus on electricity generation, energy usage, transportation, and then sort of the social aspects, and also some of the impacts and efforts that are being done locally here in the Bay Area. I'm assuming that most of you're signed up at a Bay Area school. And so I assume that most of you either live in the Bay Area or are going to live in the Bay Area, at least at some point. So going to get a little local. I'm here right now broadcasting live from a helicopter flying over the Topaz Solar Farm. I'm kidding. I wish. That's just my Zoom background for this module. But I'll actually talk about that in a few minutes. So this module, we kind of take a full-on transition from talking about causes of climate change, talking about the science behind climate change, to really focusing more on the solutions of climate change. What can we do about this? And so, all that being said, the goals for this module, first off, we're going to explore. I know that sounds like such like a fancy word. We're going to explore. But we actually are. We're actually going to kind of take a look at and talk about the key sources of electricity for both here in California and in the United States as a whole. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how we use electricity in our homes, some of the common household energy demands, and how they differentiate from the United States to here in California. And then finally, we're going to talk about two different forms of energy usage: direct energy usage and indirect energy usage. And I will use my iPhone right here as an example. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this module. So just to provide some context really quickly, Nelly was right when he said it's getting hot in here. That is now a 20-ish year old song. So some of you might not remember that. Others of you might not have been born when that song was a big hit. But it is definitely getting hot in here. We are at this point pretty much a whole degree warmer than we were in the 1800s. That might not sound like a lot, but that is actually a rapid change, a rapid increase in temperature, all things considered. When previous warming rates were 5 to 6 degrees over 4,000 years, at the rate that we're going, we are warming faster than we've ever warmed in history. So it's definitely getting hot in here. But this class isn't just meant to be doom and gloom. Like I'm not just trying to like, oh, it's getting hot here and there's nothing we can do about it. Actually, I would very, very vehemently disagree with that. I think some people have that defeatist approach of like, we can't do anything about it, we might as well learn to live with it. But there's still a lot we can do to prevent it from getting really, really bad. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing that we need to do, the first thing that you should be doing, and you're all doing it by enrolling in this class and by taking this class and watching these videos and everything, is to get educated. To get educated. So what you need to know, first off, what the problem is. We've talked about that ad nauseum. The world is getting warmer, and it's because of different things that we're doing. We are emitting greenhouse gases. Those are heating our planet up. We've changed how our land surface works. We've removed many carbon sinks and added lots of burping, farting cows. Those are all causing major problems. But from there, what causes the problem? Spoiler alert, it's us. But now for these remaining few modules, we're going to be talking about how to get out of the problem. How do we fix this? How do we live with this? How do we give our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren a better future? That includes things such as lifestyle changes that result in smarter uses of our fossil fuels, getting more energy efficient appliances and instruments and devices and so on that require a lot less energy to give you the same effect. And then greener technology. And I know green is kind of a loaded term. I saw a meme once of a green truck parked in a parking spot that said green vehicles only. Um, but when we talk about greener technology, one of the biggest things that we're talking about are renewable energy sources. Things that, one, don't have a carbon footprint or have a very minimal carbon footprint, and two, can actually be reused and reused and reused and reused, all things considered. And then finally, um, while these next two modules are primarily going to cover really the main consumer-based uses of fossil fuels, we also need to support climate politicians and policies. Um, and I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or how to vote. That is ultimately your decision. It would be unethical and honestly very rude of me to tell you otherwise. But at the same time, there are definitely many politicians out there who are concerned about what's happening to our planet and who want to do something about it. Meanwhile, there are others that just want to keep the status quo and really don't care. Um, and so when you go to the ballot box, it's really important to consider that. In addition to other economic and social issues you may have opinions on. Once again, I'm not going to tell you how or who to vote for, but that is something to consider. So today we're going to talk about electricity. And the reason why we're going to talk about electricity is that electricity is actually the second biggest source of fossil fuel use in the United States. It's the second biggest source. And next week, we'll actually talk about the biggest source, which is transportation. But what we're going to do is, first off, we're going to talk about energy-related emissions. So basically, greenhouse gas emissions, where do they come from? What are their biggest sources? Then we're going to talk about electricity generation, specifically comparing renewables to non-renewables. And then there's kind of this middle ground that I'm going to talk about. And then we're going to end by talking about household electricity use. Things like the type of light bulbs that are in your lights, your lamps, in your lamps or in any lighting fixture that you have, Energy Star appliances, and so on. So we're going to talk about that. Now, I will admit, I mean, there are whole courses that go into each one of these components. We are going to get really a 30,000 foot overview today. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called vampire electricity, and then the difference between direct energy and indirect energy. So to kind of set the stage, I had mentioned, and I think I kind of have the bad habit sometimes of equating fossil fuel use to greenhouse gas emissions. There is a pretty close to one-to-one relationship there, but obviously there's some energy production. And that kind of makes sense when you think about it. The world that we live in, I mean, think about everything in your life. Think about the electricity in your house. Think about the computer or phone that you're watching this video on. When you step outside, think about the roads that are paved or the lights that are on. All of these things require a lot of energy to happen. Um, Even in developing countries, even in countries that haven't fully industrialized yet, their infrastructures run massively on carbon emissions because there's a lot of energy that is required to make things go, to make trains run, to make planes fly, to make street lights work, to make intersection lights, the red, yellow, green lights, as I used to call them when I was a kid, to make all of those things work. All of that requires energy, and most of that energy has come from carbon dioxide emissions, or well, from the burning of fossil fuels and carbon dioxide emissions. Now, that being said, it's also worth noting that industrial production, and agriculture also play a big role. But really, the reality is that transportation, electricity, and commercial and residential usage are really the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions that we can do anything about. Industry and agriculture require more policy approaches. But so one way we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is simply by finding more energy efficient ways to use our fossil fuels. And how can we use them to get the most bang for them? And how can we reduce our dependence on them? And that's what we're going to be talking about today.